United States Navy's nuclear-powered aircraft carriers stand as a formidable centerpiece of American military power. While concerns have been raised regarding potential vulnerabilities, these aircraft carriers are anticipated to maintain a high level of survivability for the foreseeable future, provided there are no significant tactical errors. Notably, efforts are underway to enhance their resilience over time. But what weapons do the United States Navy aircraft carriers have on board that can actually make them repel any attacks on their territory? How do the United States naval forces take advantage of these lethal weapons when defending their territory should any attack occur? Dive with us into the fascinating world of naval technology and discover the various weapons the United States Navy aircraft carriers have on board to defend against lethal attacks. A unique capability. The U.S. Navy has 12 big aircraft carriers that are crucial to its maritime force and overall war strategy. Each carrier is equipped to host a wing of 70 aircraft, capable of being launched at a rate of 1 every 30 seconds when the need arises. Looking ahead, the Navy envisions that by the end of the current decade, a typical carrier air wing will possess the precision to target over 1,000 separate aim points. This will span many hundreds of miles from the carrier, all within a single day. This unparalleled capability places the United States in a league of its own, as no other nation worldwide boasts such formidable aerial prowess. Aircraft carriers embody America's commitment to influence global politics and prevent aggression, making them the most visible symbol of the country's military strength. However, the visibility and potency of these immense warships, each displacing 97,000 tons, accommodating nearly 6,000 personnel, and featuring flight decks exceeding 4 acres, prompt periodic debates about their survivability. What exactly does it take for these aircraft carriers to repel any attacks? Are they really invulnerable to attacks? Persistent concerns. Addressing concerns about aircraft carrier vulnerability is not a novel issue. Various proposed solutions actively aim to mitigate this issue. The United States Navy gained crucial insights into both the strengths and weaknesses of carriers in the initial year of World War II. The motivation for America's entry into the war was the aerial assault on Pearl Harbor, orchestrated by bombers from 6 Japanese Imperial Navy carriers. This resulted in the destruction of most of the Pacific Fleet, including all 8 battleships. Notably, the Pacific Fleet's carriers evaded destruction as they were not in port. Nevertheless, within a year after this attack, 4 of the 6 Japanese carriers met their demise, along with a majority of United States carriers in the Pacific. The destruction of the USS Hornet at Santa Cruz in October 1942 marked the final instance of the United States Navy losing a large carrier during the war. However, the lessons drawn from the initial year underscored the vulnerability of carriers, despite the implementation of radar and other defensive innovations. Concerns over carrier vulnerability prompted the Navy to explore alternatives during the interwar period. The USS Ranger, commissioned in 1934, represented the Navy's initial attempt at a carrier built from the keel up, distinguishing itself as notably lighter than the Lexington and Saratoga. However, the underwhelming performance of the Ranger led Navy leaders to conclude that operating a smaller number of large carriers made more strategic sense than deploying a larger number of smaller vessels. This decision was rooted in concerns about the diminished combat capability and survivability associated with smaller carriers. Despite ongoing efforts by civilian leaders to advocate for smaller, more numerous carriers, the Navy has consistently upheld the principle of prioritizing fewer, larger carriers. In essence, the question of carrier vulnerability emerges as a critical concern for the current generation of American leaders, significantly shaping the future composition of military forces. This issue demands thoughtful consideration and cannot be dismissed with the routine justifications that the Navy has relied on for decades to explain its force posture. The potential loss of an aircraft carrier in combat carries profound consequences, with the possibility of causing significant casualties among Americans and potentially eroding the public's resolve to sustain a war effort. In response to these concerns, the United States Navy has undertaken several measures to enhance the effectiveness of its carriers. These efforts include bolstering offensive striking power, strengthening defense capabilities, and addressing the challenging task of aligning procurement costs. Within this context, specific developments have been initiated to elevate the lethality of the United States Navy's aircraft carrier fleet. Finding the carrier. Anyone who contemplates launching an attack on an aircraft carrier would have issue finding it in the first place. Despite the carrier's colossal size, finding it is no simple feat, especially in times of war. The United States Navy adopts a strategic approach when facing significant littoral threats, opting to position carriers at least 200 nautical miles from shore. This involves deploying submarines, unmanned vehicles, and collaborative assets to gather crucial intelligence about potential dangers. Conducting operations far out at sea does not unduly restrict the deployment of the carrier's strike aircraft. Both the FA-18EF Super Hornets and the next-generation Joint Strike Fighters boast unrefueled combat ranges of approximately 600 nautical miles. In the initial phases of conflict, these aircraft, along with cruise missiles from other vessels in the carrier's battle group, are utilized to neutralize immediate threats to the group, such as enemy sensors, weapons, and communications, including satellite downlinks. As these threats diminish, the carrier gains the flexibility to approach closer to land, expanding the reach of its strike aircraft over enemy territories. The carrier's ability to remain elusive is reinforced while navigating the open sea. The adversary's capacity to locate it is inherently limited, supported by the battle group's endeavors to suppress enemy sensors and communications. The carrier maintains constant movement, strategically designed to steer clear of potential vulnerability zones. Notably, the majority of the Navy's carriers will be nuclear-powered by the end of this decade, a crucial factor in avoiding detection. Nuclear propulsion empowers the ship to maneuver at maximum speed for extended periods, eliminating the need for complex logistics associated with frequent refueling at sea. Typically, the carrier's most rudimentary defense against detection is distance. The vast expanses in which carriers typically operate make it challenging for adversaries to pinpoint their location, even in the absence of active countermeasures implemented by the battle group. Tracking the carrier. Simply finding an aircraft carrier isn't just about pinpointing its position at a single moment. It involves a complex process beyond mere identification. Once the carrier is identified, an attacker faces a series of crucial decisions to initiate weapon launches. Meanwhile, the carrier is in constant motion. In a brief 30-minute window, it could traverse a circle spanning 700 square miles. Over 90 minutes, this area expands to a substantial 6,000 square miles. If cruising at high speed in a straight line, the carrier may cover over 700 nautical miles in a day from its initial sighting. Effectively keeping up with the carrier's movements requires establishing a continuous track, a challenging task that demands a combination of land-based, sea-based, space-based, and airborne sensors. Furthermore, this tracking must be precise enough to provide accurate targeting coordinates for weapons approaching the carrier. Presently, even the United States encounters difficulty in achieving this, and no other nation possesses the necessary capabilities. There are 4 primary types of sensors suitable for tracking vessels at sea: radar, acoustic, electro-optical, and electronic intelligence. Radar is commonly used in line-of-sight applications, but can also involve over-the-horizon systems deflecting energy off the ionosphere when tracking carriers. Acoustic sensors identify distinctive sounds emitted by the target to determine its location. Electro-optical sensors, like photoreconnaissance satellites, focus on the visible or infrared signature of the target. Electronic intelligence sensors collect transmissions from the target's onboard equipment. Each sensor type comes with its own set of advantages and drawbacks. Space-based or airborne radar, capable of tracking moving ground targets, holds the most potential for providing reliable targeting information due to its precision and ability to operate day or night in various weather conditions. However, few potential adversaries are expected to possess such systems before the next decade's end. The United States has deferred plans for a constellation of space-based radars, and no other nation is actively pursuing such a project. Airborne radars like JSTARS or the Global Hawk unmanned aerial vehicle offer a more immediate solution. But they have limitations in field of view, susceptibility to interception, and currently surpass the technical capabilities of prospective adversaries. Integrated missile defense. The prevailing threat to aircraft carriers is currently posed by the strategic integration of cruise and precision ballistic missiles. Each of these missile types individually has the potential to inflict significant damage on a carrier, jeopardizing its mission by causing severe harm to the flight deck or worse. However, when combined, they create a formidable challenge for fleet air defense, particularly when cruise missiles approach from multiple directions. While the issue of air defense is not new for aircraft carriers, historical incidents, such as the loss of World War II carriers to air attacks, and the Soviet plan to use missile-carrying backfire bombers against United States carriers, highlight its ongoing significance. The contemporary threat landscape is shaped by the convergence of ballistic and cruise missiles, prompting the United States Navy to focus on enhancing its ballistic missile defenses over the past decade. Recent advancements include the exploration of multi-object kill vehicles, interceptors designed to neutralize multiple incoming targets and decoys simultaneously. This development reflects the Navy's commitment to fortifying carrier defenses against evolving threats. The implementation of these sophisticated interception capabilities undoubtedly enhances the carrier's resilience, making them more formidable and challenging for potential adversaries to engage. Laser. The power generation capabilities of the Gerald Ford CVN-78 class vastly exceed those of the previous Nimitz-class carriers. While in the short term the impact may seem subtle, it does facilitate certain tasks, notably streamlining the operation of the new electromagnetic launch system, also called EMILS. Looking ahead, this surplus power generation capacity holds the potential to transform lasers into an effective tool for air defense. The United States Navy has been actively exploring the integration of directed energy weapons as a formidable defense system. Laser technology, in theory, offers solutions to various challenges associated with ballistic and cruise missile defense, addressing concerns like accuracy and the limited availability of interceptors. A carrier equipped with robust laser defenses has the potential to mitigate the threat posed by sizable salvos of cruise and ballistic missiles. This not only adds an extra layer of security, but also enhances the lethality of a carrier group, particularly in contested regions. The strategic deployment of lasers could significantly elevate the carrier's defensive capabilities over the long term. Drones. Following the post-Cold War cancellation of the A-12 Avenger and the subsequent retirement of the A-6 Intruder, the United States Navy's carrier force has faced a void in long-range strike capabilities. In response, the Navy adopted the Tomahawk missile system, providing a less risky alternative to manned aircraft for operators. Additionally, the United States Navy is actively exploring in-flight refueling strategies to extend the range of its fighter bombers, albeit with some strain on the airframes of existing planes. However, a pivotal discussion within the Navy revolves around the U-class program, a concerted effort to equip the Navy with advanced long-range stealth drones. The central focus of this debate hinges on the intended capabilities of these drones. Advocates are pushing for a long-range strike aircraft, emphasizing offensive capabilities, while those adopting a more cautious approach advocate for a drone primarily designed for intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance purposes. The outcome of this debate holds significant implications for the lethality and effectiveness of the United States Navy's carrier force. Both options, whether a long-range strike drone or a drone prioritizing ISR, bring unique advantages. The development of such advanced drones represents a considerable enhancement to the carrier air wing. While the implementation of a long-range strike drone might incur higher costs, it would undeniably contribute a valuable asset to the Navy's airborne capabilities, reinforcing the carrier force's overall effectiveness. Gen 5 to Gen 6 Air Wing. At the core of a carrier's strength lies the prowess of its air wing. Over the next decade, significant transformations are on the horizon for the aircraft launched from United States carriers, primarily marked by the introduction of the F-35C. Despite potential challenges within the program, this new addition promises a substantial boost in stealth, sensor capacity, and communications capabilities across the airway. The integration of the EA-18 Growler into this equation further amplifies the lethality of the entire air wing. Looking ahead, the Navy's commitment to developing a sixth-generation fighter is poised to sustain the vitality and effectiveness of the carrier air wing, even when confronting heavily defended targets. The aircraft embarked upon by the Gerald Ford upon entering service will undergo a remarkable metamorphosis, bearing little resemblance to those it operates when it ultimately concludes its service. This evolution underscores the continuous pursuit of cutting-edge capabilities to ensure the carrier's air wing remains adaptive and potent. Layered defensive systems. In the face of the complex challenges presented by integrated air defenses and the operational constraints of available aerospace munitions, adversaries may turn to sea-based attacks using mines or torpedoes launched by submarines against carriers. To counter these threats, the United States Navy has developed a comprehensive layered defensive system. The Navy's supremacy in the undersea environment is as significant as its superiority in aerial combat. One of the primary maritime threats to aircraft carriers is the deployment of drifting or tethered mines. Virtually every littoral power possesses some capability to employ mines, and the global market sees over a dozen countries exporting them. Mines, being cost-effective and easy to use, can inflict comparable damage to other munitions under the right circumstances. Moreover, advancements in digital technologies have enhanced the performance of newer mines. Despite their effectiveness, mines have inherent limitations. Bottom mines are rendered ineffective in waters deeper than 600 feet, commonly found over 100 miles from shore. Floating mines tethered to the bottom are relatively easy to detect in such depths. Additionally, deploying tens or hundreds of thousands of mines is necessary to effectively saturate a carrier's operational area in the open sea. Once released, these mines pose a significant threat not only to a United States carrier battle group, but also to an adversary's vessels. While mines pose a greater threat in shallow waters and choke points like the Straits of Hormuz, the Navy has strategically planned carrier operations in these areas only after thorough mine clearance efforts. Substantial investments have been made in diverse mine detection and neutralization systems. The extensive use of mine countermeasure systems within battle groups minimizes the probability of a mine striking a carrier. Furthermore, even if a mine were to hit, the risk of severe damage is minimal. Nimitz-class carriers feature thousands of separate compartments and robust side armor designed to deflect or contain the explosive impact of mines. Larger ships, particularly nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, possess the resilience to absorb more damage without being disabled. Despite the genuine challenge posed by the proliferation of mines among potentially hostile littoral powers, their threat to aircraft carriers is comparatively less than to other types of warships. Shallow water anti-submarine systems. A significant undersea threat to aircraft carriers arises from submarines equipped with advanced munitions, particularly wake-homing torpedoes. While the Cold War-era nuclear-powered submarine threat has diminished, the rise of countries like China and Iran, acquiring quiet diesel-electric submarines and modern torpedoes, poses a renewed challenge in international waters. Navigating the complexities of tracking and neutralizing such submarines in the shallow waters near these nations' coastlines is a formidable task. To address this challenge, the United States Navy has made substantial investments in shallow water anti-submarine systems deployable from aircraft, surface combatants, and its own undersea warships. Among these innovations, unmanned underwater vehicles and the advanced deployable system stand out. The latter is a portable hydrophone array with the capability to detect even the quietest submarines. When integrated with the advanced undersea warfare capabilities of the latest United States nuclear attack submarines and the extensive anti-submarine capabilities of the surface fleet, it becomes evident why the Navy anticipates maintaining supremacy in underwater operations. Cost management. The biggest threat to the future of aircraft carriers doesn't stem from missiles or torpedoes, but rather from the colossal combined costs associated with the ships, their escorts, and their air wings. This issue has persisted for over a century, with carriers becoming increasingly expensive, placing heightened strain on defense budgets and national governments. Both the Ford class and the F-35C have followed this trend, surpassing cost expectations. To tackle this challenge, the Navy aims to control costs by prioritizing construction efficiencies and leveraging concurrency to expedite the development and operational integration of new technologies. However, the outcomes thus far have fallen short of expectations. In the future, the substantial costs associated with these ships and their aircraft might compel the Navy to make tough choices between opting for smaller carriers or reducing their overall numbers. It's crucial to recognize that aircraft carriers, at their core, are substantial vessels with flat decks. Their true strength lies in serving as secure mobile air bases for powerful air wings. Considering the anticipated lifespan of the new carriers entering service with the United States Navy, lasting 50 years or more, there's confidence that these vessels will undergo significant advancements in lethality over the coming decades. Aircraft carrier. Vulnerability. Aircraft carriers are not considered invulnerable. However, when evaluating the myriad challenges an aggressor faces in attempting a successful attack, it becomes evident that few military systems offer greater survivability. Aircraft carriers are elusive and challenging to track, fortified with multiple layers of sophisticated air and sea defenses that prove difficult to breach. Even if an attacker were to target and strike a carrier, the inherent resilience of the ship makes significant damage improbable. The ongoing evolution toward a new carrier design, initiated in January 2001 with the contract for the last Nimitz-class carrier, promises further enhancements to survivability. This includes the development of a new combat system, reinforced ship structures, streamlined internal layouts, electromagnetic signature reduction, and increased automation for functions such as damage control. The resulting CVNX class of carriers is poised to be more efficient, capable, and notably more survivable. In considering the vulnerability of aircraft carriers, it is essential to frame the question in terms of viable alternatives. Over the past 60 years, since the sinking of the last large United States carrier, the nation has heavily relied on carriers to address overseas threats and crises. Today's carrier air wings exhibit advanced strike capabilities, surpassing those in Operation Desert Storm. By the end of the current decade, they will have the capacity to precisely attack over 1,000 aim points deep within an enemy's interior in a single day. The unique ability to conduct such operations without the political constraints or military risks associated with land bases is a capability exclusive to the United States. Even if carriers were perceived as more vulnerable than they are, policymakers must consider the limited alternatives available to accomplish these critical missions. Looking ahead, unmanned or transatmospheric vehicles may emerge as alternatives to carrier-based aircraft in the full spectrum of strike missions. However, currently, unmanned systems lack the reliability to strike mobile targets, and most non-naval aircraft are reliant on vulnerable land bases that may be unavailable. Any discourse on aircraft carrier vulnerability must acknowledge the vital role these ships play in current strategy and recognize the scarcity of alternatives. Fortunately, carriers exhibit high survivability, with prospects of further improvement in the present decade. While the day may come when carriers transition into history books, for now, they remain an indispensable bridge to an evolving future.